Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. I think that some people in the audience know a thing or two about Europeana, but just to make sure we're on the same page, I want to say just a couple of general words. Europeana was founded more or less 10 years ago as started as a political idea to make a digital platform for European heritage, to make European heritage more accessible. Since then, we have grown to be we're a non-profit foundation sitting in the Netherlands, in The Hague. We have grown to be a network of around 4,000 institutions around Europe, cultural institutions from different sectors, museums, libraries, archives, collections, and more. We have an open data platform which offers different services, but mainly services for publishing content, heritage content for institutions. This service actually serves more than 3,000 content providers from Europe. This is the main service of the platform, but we also have a portfolio of other services, mainly supporting institutions in the digital agendas and the digital publishing. To be fair to my wonderful colleagues in the office, this is not a presentation, a general presentation about Europeana. Europeana does a lot of interesting things. I invite you to visit our webpage, Europeana Pro, for cultural professional, where things are described, and we can spend the whole day talking about Europeana. I want to talk here about one specific area which I work on. To my mind, also a very important area for the success of Europeana and data platforms like Europeana. So that's the goal. That's content aggregation. That's the point of my presentation. So if we look back at what we achieved in this a bit less than 10 years, and we like to look back in a self-reflective way. We are used to hear a lot of criticism and, of course, gratitude. That's a usual thing for us. It's okay. We're very happy to be engaged in a constructive dialogue about what Europeana should do better. I think that when we look back at these 10 years, I think Europeana has been very successful in building the network, in promoting the idea of the importance of a data platform for heritage in Europe, promoting best practices for publishing data digitally, building awareness of the platform, things like that. I think what we have been less good at is inclusiveness. So I said that we are giving service to more than 3,000 institutions in Europe. That's a lot, but there are much more in Europe. There are many, many more. I'm going to talk about this a bit later. So inclusiveness, just to give inspiration for why we need inclusiveness, I would like to use this slide, which I hope you can see it, but that's not really, you will notice. I stole this slide from the presentation of Dan Cohen, the director of DPLA, Digital Public Library of America, which he presented at the Europeana annual conference. Now, on the one hand, and this is just a regular search result that Dan did on Riga, the city where the conference was taking place. And on the one hand, there is nothing special about this. It's something very mundane for all of us. You have a search result, and you have this very typical distribution. A lot of content about the subject of interest in a couple of institutions who were just happened to have a collection on the subject, and a very long tail of institutions who happen to have 1, 2, 3 subjects on the area, items on the subject. Now, on the one hand, this is something which is nothing special. On the other hand, it's very special, and I think it demonstrates the power of digital platforms like Europeana, because this is the only way where we can really have access to these singular items from many, many different locations, and the only way to maybe have access to one gem that will make your use case shine, will make your specific need answered, is to have access to this place. So I think, and this is the demonstration of the importance of inclusiveness. We have to be inclusive in order to facilitate such use cases, which can be only done through digital, only using digital platforms which aggregate content from many places. So let's look at some numbers to clarify the need for the innovation to achieve this inclusiveness. in the years that we have been working so far, and it's more or less 2010, it's a bit less than 10 years, we have managed to onboard and offer a publishing service to around 3,500 institutions in Europe. Now, in general, in Europe, there are around 50,000 cultural institutions. It very much depends on how you count. It's a science in itself, but these are the numbers. This is the magnitude, a bit more, a bit less. Now, if we continue growing like this, like we have been growing, then it will take many years to offer a service to all the institutions in Europe. So we need a different kind of growth to reach this level in the foreseeable future. We don't have many years to wait for. So it could be reasonable to, for example, to say that we want to offer service to institutions by the end of the current strategic planning period of Europeana and the financial strategic planning period of the European Union by 2020. So we need a very different kind of growth. Now, I'm not saying necessarily that by 2020 all the European cultural institutions should be on Europeana. This is not realistic, this is not feasible. I'm not saying that Europeana should strive to bring them all on board. Europeana is developing a content strategy, so this should be defined by our content strategy. What institutions we want on Europeana, what content we want on Europeana. But I am saying that all these institutions should have an option to be on Europeana. So if they decide that Europeana is a place for them, because European Union funds us as a place for them, we should give them this option. So our vision should be to offer this option to these institutions. Now let's talk a bit about the problem space. Why cannot we grow today as fast as we need to reach this vision? So what is the process of getting on board of Europeana, having a content published in Europeana? A cultural institution somewhere in Europe, in Hungary, waking up in the morning and reading in local newspaper that Europeana is a great place to publish content, deciding to go there. What is the process? So the institution goes to our website, there are a contact form, they need to contact us. Europeana will tell them in a couple of days who is the designated aggregator of the institution according to its profile, according to its geographical location, or according to its thematic specialization. So aggregator, this is the key word of my topic, aggregation. We'll hear it a lot. Now it takes a couple of days to get this email back, then it takes a couple of days to reach the institution, the aggregator, then the aggregator will contact the institution back and give them instructions on how to prepare the data to be published to Europeana. The institution will send the data, the aggregation will take a couple of weeks to process the data internally. Then it will prepare the content for Europeana. Europeana will pick it up. It will take another couple of weeks, and it will take another couple of weeks for us to process internally. So all in all, and then we publish it, of course. So all in all, from the moment an institution decides that it wants to have data published on Europeana till the moment where it will see it published online, it's a process of, it's at least several weeks if everything goes perfectly fine. But you all know that things never go perfectly fine with data and with people, and there's a lot of data and a lot of people in this process. So things will usually, there will be some errors. People will correct things. So quite often there is a need for another cycle. So all in all, we are talking about many month process, and that's of course too long. So along the way we accumulate time. It takes time, and we live in the world of instantaneous response. We can like it or not like it, but we are used to have things done immediately in the digital world. And if we are used to this outside our professional domain, then we are also expecting this now in the professional domain. That's how people think. We accumulate frustration because not only you have to wait, but also the visibility between the stages is quite low. So the institution has very little visibility into the workings of aggregators. Aggregators have little visibility into the workings of Europeana. All in all, institutions are quite often left in the dark about when their content will be published and what is the process that is going on while they wait. We accumulate money because there's First, because time is money, and second, because there are a lot of redundancies. The longer the process, the more redundancies there are in it. Finally, I think maybe it's the most important thing, we accumulate what I call digital disconnect. So ironically, the idea of aggregators the idea of aggregators was to make the process simpler. The idea that the original premise was that a data platform like Europeana, a central data platform, cannot handle all these thousands of institutions centrally. So the aggregators were set to help the central aggregator, the super aggregator, as sometimes called, to handle the institutions. But in fact, and this approach, and just an aside, to be fair, I'm describing here not just Europeana's reality. This is a reality of a lot of data aggregating platforms in Europe and also outside Europe. This is how the world has been thinking for the last 10, 15 years. Now, ironically, this approach and this approach has been working for 10, 15 years. It helped to amass critical mass of content. It actually helped to bring data from a lot of places to the central platform. But now, time has changed. And ironically, now this approach does a disservice to the goal, because it creates a lot of static replicas along the way. And every technologist will tell you that keeping 2 replicas of digital content is quite a daunting task. Persistent identifiers, changing links, updates. This is quite a lot of work to make 2 things work in sync. Now we have several things in sync. So the more we replicate data along the way, the less synchronized the whole system is, and the less chance there is for Europeana to bring value back to the original institution. So that's why the current approach of Europeana, but not only Europeana, has to be revised. So that's the task of aggregation innovation, the team which I'm leading in Europeana, how we reinvent this process so that it becomes quicker, it becomes transparent, efficient, and it creates a connected ecosystem of data. How we do not compromise data quality because we simplify the process, but maybe even improve data quality, and data quality is one of the primary concerns of Europeana. How do we make the best use of technologies? How do we offer flexible solutions to our partners rather than forcing them into one-size-fits-all solution? And finally, how do we do it in such a way that we do not throw everything we have been doing so far into garbage can, but how can we really preserve our previous investments? So that was the definition of the task definition in a way of our aggregation innovation group, which I am leading. Now, this was an experimental project, and we are still defining this as an experimental project. So we were not requested to build something by a certain date. We were requested to come up with several ideas, strategies, prototypes, and suggest them for Europeana further roadmap. So we were thinking in terms of strategies. What strategies can we put in the solution, the innovative solution? So our first strategy is the centricity of APIs. Our APIs are basic building blocks of today's digital interconnected world. This is how institutions speak to each other. Europeana has an API. You can use this API to read data from Europeana, but this is only a read API. This is not a write API. So you can't write data to Europeana. So that is something that needs to be addressed. We need to have a write API. Of course, there should be some level of trust around this API. So we need to find mechanism to see who can use it, what conditions, what is the onboarding approval process. But ultimately, there should be a very simple, open API for developers. This API should be developer-friendly. So a developer in your institution, even if she is not intimately familiar with Europeana, should be able to start using it very soon. The same as with other APIs in the world. It should be simple, it should have simple language, and very important, so interoperability is a very important thing for Europeana. Those who know what EDM is know what I'm talking about. Interoperability is important, but it shouldn't come at the expense of usability. And so APIs should be simple and accessible, and interoperability should come after that, not instead of usability. Second strategy was actually about revising the relationship between Europeana and the aggregating partners. A lot of aggregating partners, data partners and aggregating partners have their own, develop their own strategies for publishing digital content in a standard way. They have their own APIs, something which is increasingly popular now is a IIIF format for digital content, interoperable exchange of digital content. So an archives portal for Europe, this is just a couple of examples. German Digital Library, they all have their own APIs. Now, the goal here is to say we want to use these resources. So rather than coming to institution and saying, work hard to supply data to Europeana, we should be saying them, work hard to develop your own standard-based publishing service, and we will sort out how to connect to it. So in a way, this is this push-pull paradigm that is often referred to. How do we combine? How do we pull from those that this is relevant to them, and how we make sure that those who want to push to Europeana will push, and we pull from others. How we combine these approaches together in a harmonious way. And finally, the last strategy is getting close to source. Now this is really important for reducing this digital disconnect which I was talking about. We need to shorten the path from the institution to the central platform, because people who understand data the best, they actually sit at the source. They are with the institutions. They understand data, and they're using certain systems, commercial or open source. So we need to be working with these systems as close as possible to these systems. This will allow to create effort multipliers. If we know how to work with one content management system, we have now opportunity to onboard all the users, all the organizations which are using this content management system. It gives us effort multipliers of tens, hundreds, and even thousands of institutions kind of with one move. And it will allow our data partners focus on the data quality rather than on the process. So if you ask anyone who is involved with supplying data to Europeana, a lot of attention goes to the process, emails, checks, and so on. Their time should go on seeing that things work all right on Europeana, not on the process. So these were the three strategies that we put forth for the solution. Now I do want to show some results, share some results with you, specifically around the implementation of this get close to source strategy. We partnered with two CMS partners to pilot the idea. One of them is Kulta, who are present here, also outside this room, Hungarian partner, and I would like to thank them from here for a wonderful cooperation ahead. I'm not going to do a live demo for you because that's kind of, it will be too hard, so I'm just showing screenshots, but you should trust me, it's working in reality. This is a Kulta's example, Kulta CMS system, content management system for museums. There is a record here. That's how the collection manager works, and there is a small button on the right side, on the bottom, which says publish to Europeana. So the idea is that without leaving the natural working habitat, the collection manager will actually publish this record to Europeana. There is also an option to do it for several records, so there is a search box on the background, and then these are the results of the search, and then the collection manager would just choose several examples and publish them to Europeana. And then after this is done, the records immediately appear on the Europeana portal. Now this already works. They appear on the staging portal, on the portal that we use for experiments, not the actual Europeana portal. But this flow already works and is already fully connected. Now it could look like something quite trivial. It's a small step it looks like a small step, but for people who have been involved with the Europeana's aggregation or with any other kind of aggregation know that this looks like a miracle to them. Like pressing the button and seeing the record on Europeana, it looks like a miracle. That's what we are aiming for. Important to say that behind the scenes, the tool uses the API that we developed, and which I mentioned. Actually, the same API. There was nothing which was not particular for this tool. And any other kind of tool, so for example, there is another partner that we also partnered with, Semantica. Also not far from here, a CMS company, a company producing software for museums from Maribor in Slovenia. This is how their CMS system looks like, completely different, but also this published Europeana button, which behind the scenes uses the same API and the same effect, so you can see content on Europeana right after the publishing. Small step for technologists looking outside, a very big step for Europeana. Also important to make sure that there are also other processes happening in Europeana on the behind the scenes when people upload data. So we do semantic enrichment to increase discoverability of content. We do some cleaning, we do some normalization, and so far in our experimental project, we have not implemented all these processes, but we are working on that, and that should be possible. That should be possible. That is possible. The goal here was actually to showcase that this dream of a direct publishing from the source, from the CMS, directly to Europeana is possible. Let's see how much I'll say shortly something about this. So I was mentioning the idea of reversing the relationship. So this is the push paradigm, what we were talking before. This is the push paradigm. The collection manager decides that she wants to publish certain records. Pressing the button, the records appear on Europeana. What about the pool? The idea is that when there is a publishing service which is already available, we will just need some very basic control dashboard, console for people, whether in Europeana or at the institution. It's not very important because it demands little work, to actually trigger the harvesting process, trigger the publishing process. So this is how this console looks like. We have defined several sources, some with API, some with OIP image, and I apologize about the quality of the screenshots. And again, whoever is responsible just needs to press to define the source, to schedule, for example, if they want to have a monthly harvesting process or a weekly harvesting process, then they have just to start the task, and they have a simple way to see that the task is executing, and also to browse errors along the way. This is how we foresee this change of relationship working. So this is more or less it. What next? So again, to emphasize, this is still not working in production. So if you want to be on Europeana, tomorrow you can't still use that. But we very much hope that this will be a part of Europeana very soon. We are working on that. We are delivering the reports of this group, of this experimental group, to Europeana's management. And we will see how we need to update our products roadmap and our policies, because that will require changes in policies, how we can implement this kind of approach. There is a web page for this effort. You can look at this. We are very, very keen on feedback. So if you have a developer who has a couple of hours to play with the API, if you have a CMS provider who likes you and will be happy to give you a couple of hours of developer time to test the API, if you have a no-API image service that you would like to try it, we will be really thankful to you, because we want to hear your feedback, because that helps us to shape our thoughts and to shape the future product. So yes, we want to hear from you, really. Again, to leave you with this vision, that's where we want to be, an inclusive digital platform for publishing heritage content for all European institutions, cultural institutions. Thank you.